often a perennial pusher. This is an annual I can get behind. Cerinthe, or Cerinthe Major. I'm not 100% sure if you say Cerinthe or Cerinthe. In my head I say Cerinthe, so I'm going to keep saying Cerinthe. Right? I've only known about it for a few years, to be honest. And I seeded it this year under grow lights in February. I just got blooms late July, so it has been a journey. But you know what? I recommend growing from seed. First of all, because it's really hard to find Cerinthe in garden centers. Like, you just don't see it a lot. You'd have to go to a really specific nursery or call in. But the process from seed is really not so bad. The germination period is about 3 weeks, so not super fast, sort of in the middle. And then you'd want to start 4 to 6 weeks before your last frost. The seeds are large enough that you can actually even soak them the night before you plant them to aid the germination, maybe speed it up a little bit.
Here is a visual of the seeds. They look like those little cacao nibs that you can buy all cut up, brown with a little curl. If you're growing from seed, high humidity is supposed to work well for germinating because they're larger, right? So you don't have to worry about the seeds rotting. So do that soaking trick the night before. This is what the seeds look like before they're mature. Once the blossom drops off the flower, you're left with these 2 little green seeds. And then they mature and they turn black, and you can literally just squeeze them out of the pod. They're so big, they're easy to see, easy to release.
Here is a photo of what the seedling looked like in March under my grow light, just for a visual. Other names for Cerinthe: Pride of Gibraltar for this specific species. Honeyworts is a really common name for Cerinthe. And the blue shrimp plant, people will call it blue shrimp plant. Little shrimpies, because of the way they look from far away, maybe? I'm not sure, but I like it. Cerinthe is in the borage family, Boraginaceae. I've done quite a few profiles on borage family plants, and I wouldn't have guessed that this was in the borage family because usually borage family plants have really hairy, coarse, sort of rough texture on their foliage, and Cerinthe does not. It's quite smooth. It comes from the Mediterranean region, so it likes hot, full sun. You can grow in partial shade, but it could get leggy and you may not get as many blooms. So go for full sun if you can. The roots of this plant are fibrous, and the base of the plant, you should check this out. This is thick, and this part becomes the main stem of the plant. So it's really holding the whole thing up. Each seed produces quite a robust plant, so it makes sense that it's so thick. All of these that I've cut for this video are axillary stems. So I left the main stem and I'm just snipping off long axillary stems for visual. The foliage is so fresh and vibrant, green, silvery almost, depending on the time of day. The bracts up by the flower buds are like silvery greenish gray, very cool tone of green. You don't get that a lot in plants. One plant will grow 1 to 3 feet tall and kind of 1 to 2 feet wide, give or take. Mine was quite leggy because I started it under the grow lights, and let's just say I didn't have like an ideal setup, so there were several different seeds and my lights weren't quite as close as I would have liked them to be. So, you know, the plants reached for the light and hence they were a bit leggy. But nonetheless, they survived and they're gorgeous, they're beautiful, and they have strengthened over time. Now, let me give you a warning about containers. Okay, with this foliage, with the way that this plant grows, make sure that you have a really nice container dedicated mostly to the Cerinthe, because if you look here at my container, I got really excited, and like I said, it was my first time growing it, and I put it into the big container on my deck with several other plants. Okay, the amaranth was nice because it has sort of a spilling effect, and then the Cerinthe is really nice height and adds sort of wow factor to the pot. But I also put in like some zinnias and some gazanias, and you know what, in hindsight, probably wouldn't have planted those in there because the Cerinthe is like taking over the entire container. It was actually good that I cut these because now there's a little more space for everything else. But dedicate almost all of your container to the Cerinthe if you're planting in a container. The leaves very beautifully alternate up the stem, back, forth, pretty close together for this really nice look. And then at the top, you get these clusters of terminal flowers. There's these really deep tubed flowers. They're nodding, so if flowers had eyes, they're looking down.
Oh, look at this one. Just a little cerinthe bud peeking out of its bract.
There are some cultivars that are pink or like creamy-ish yellow, but I think this purplish is one of the more popular cultivars. I really imagine tiny pollinators getting like really deep inside these tube-like flowers. You can see the stigma and the stamens. The flowers are only about 3 millimeters in diameter. Tiny shrimpy tubey blooms. If you haven't guessed already, Cerinthe makes an amazing cut flower. For its height, but also just for its hardiness. It's really not very delicate. It's in the borage family. I mean, come on, borage. A lot of them are tough. Think of the borage plant. Have you seen that thing? Anyway, the perfect time to cut them, if you're growing Cerinthe and you want to cut them for bouquets, they'll last for like over a week, and I cut mine just a little bit too late. What you want to do is cut them when the bracts are just starting to nod and looking sort of like a little more silvery, darker and green. And then the flowers will bloom in your bouquet. But this works for me. I'm liking this. I have read that slugs love these. And I do have slugs in my garden, so that's why I chose to put them in a container. I did pre-plan that. If you have slugs and you're worried, I've heard that like beer traps, I don't know about those. Eggshells. My grandfather in Switzerland used to put eggshells and swore against snail and slugs that worked really well. I don't know. Tell me your stories. Have you used eggshells against slugs and snails? Did it work? I'm very curious to hear other people's stories. Thank you for watching Plant Speak.